Welcome to Wanderlust and Wishes, the podcast where we explore the world one destination at a time.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Krystle.
As travel agents with fantastical vacations, we are here to share our passion for travel and help you turn your wanderlust into reality.
From hidden gems to bucket list adventures, join us as we dive into the sights, sounds, and stories of our favorite destinations.
So grab your passport, pack your bags, and let's embark on this journey together.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 34 of Wanderlust and Wishes. Today, we're going to cover lightning lanes at Walt Disney World, what it is, and how to use it in 2025. First, though, we do have a quick ask of our listeners. If there's anything that you'd like to hear from us in 2025, a specific topic, a show idea, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at wanderlustandwishespodcast@gmail.com, DM us, or leave it in a review. Speaking of, we would love if you would go leave us a rating and or review. It really does help our show algorithm. It helps our show be visible to more people.
All right, moving into some news. The Fuentes del Moro pool at Caribbean Beach Resort is closed starting January 13th and should be back open by the end of January. I think something broke because this was not planned. This was very last minute. This was not announced. And last spring break, when we stayed there, it was closed for like 2 months. And I was like obsessively checking every day because they like drained it, painted, tile, rework, all of it. So I'm sure this was just like a very unexpected thing for it to go down again like this.
It was announced basically after everybody found out about it. I think they were kind of forced to make an announcement.
But I understand it. That's one of the better pools on property.
Oh, yeah. I agree for sure. I mean, especially being at a moderate resort. I actually just sent some quote information to a family and they were looking for a resort with a great pool. And that's, obviously Stormalong Bay is closed through June. So that's not an option.
Even double dagger.
Yeah. And so the pool at Caribbean Beach and at Polynesian, they're really kind of next in line if you're looking at great pools.
It does have 2 slides.
Yep.
My kids loved that.
Construction walls are up to start working on the entrance to the Spaceship Earth Lounge. They've obviously been working inside. This is planned to be open in late spring, so they definitely have been working on it. This is just the entrance piece. The exit that you typically use to exit the post-ride experience, that's been blocked off. So you're going to be directed to leave using the side that leads to the World Nature area over where World Nature is, where the Moana exhibit is. The lounge is going to be located in the former corporate lounge space that now overlooks the World Celebration area. So it's right next to Spaceship Earth, and you honestly may have completely missed it if you just weren't paying attention, but it's there.
It's probably painted in go away green right now.
Yes. It's painted in like, don't see me, don't look at me yet right now.
So if you didn't know, Disney has a couple of their own colors. One of them is go away green. There's one that's something blue for the sky, but they're strategic for hiding things in plain sight. And once you're like aware of it, it's like, oh, so fun little factoid for you.
But sometimes when you realize it's there and how many times you've walked by it and never noticed it, you're like, that's crazy.
All right, we got lots of news from Disney Cruise Line. They're introducing a new ship class. The 3 vessels in Disney's new ship class will feature industry-leading technology and design to expand Disney Cruise Line's global reach and support its environmental goals. Able to carry 3,000 guests and measuring approximately 100,000 gross tons, they'll be 20% larger than the Disney Magic class and smaller than the Disney Dream and Disney Wish classes, ultimately allowing Disney Cruise Line to access more ports and destinations across the globe, bring its world-class entertainment, incredible dining, guest services, and uniquely Disney experiences to more families and more places. The 3 ships, which are unnamed at the moment, are planned for delivery in 2029, 2030, and 2031.
They also have announced there's a 4th Wish class ship In addition to this new class of vessel, which Krystle just talked over, the Disney Cruise Line will introduce an additional sister ship to the Disney Wish, Disney Treasure, and Disney Destiny. The ship, set for delivery in 2027, will be approximately 144,000 gross tons and accommodate 4,000 guests and be powered by liquefied natural gas. So we don't have a name yet. That's kind of to be determined or to be announced.
So we're getting two more. The end of this year, the Destiny and the Adventure, which is the Asia ship.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't look like we're getting anything in 2026. Getting one in 2027, and then 29, 30, and 31. So essentially 6 more ships in the next.
In like 5 years. Yeah.
That's wild.
And, we've talked a lot about, I know we feel like probably feels like a broken record, but we've talked a lot about how huge the cruising industry is right now. I mean, all of the cruise lines, not just Disney, are creating new ship lines or new ship classes and building out those ships. We have another ship from Royal Caribbean, the Star of the Seas. That's basically a sister ship to the Icon of the Sea. So it's going to be massive. That's going to be coming out this year.
So it sounds like a lot to have 13, but compared to like Royal Caribbean, who has almost 30, and MSG has mid 20s to 30, Norwegian has probably about that many as well.
Yeah.
So Disney Cruise Line is actually very small in comparison.
It is. Okay. Our topic today is a big one. It is a question that we as travel advisors get asked all the time. And it obviously something that we help with because it is this program that we have now is newer and it's been changing like every year, every other year for the last several years, basically since COVID. So before COVID, we had Fast Pass. And then after COVID, we had Genie Plus that came out once they started allowing more people into the parks. And it was different because Fast Pass, the previous program, Fast Pass, you did not have to pay for it, but you did only get 3 choices and you were able to choose prior to your trip. Well, with Genie Plus, you had to pay for it and you had to pay for it and pick your choices the day of. But you were also able to choose more as they became available. One of the biggest complaints about Genie Plus was that people liked the ability to pre-select prior to their trip like you used to do with Fast Pass. And so they have kind of come out with a kind of hybrid of the two with the newest branded program called Multi-Pass Lightning Lane and Single Pass Lightning Lane.
Okay, before we go any further, if you are here for Disneyland's version of Lightning Lane Multi-Pass, do not listen to any of this. It will just confuse you even more. Disneyland runs off of a completely different way to do it. So this is Disney World specific. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. Lightning lanes are not essential, but I personally believe that you get the most out of your trip if you use them, especially if it's a once in a lifetime or you only go every few years. Like, do it right. Like, go big, go home. So I am in the camp of we always try to use them to the best of our abilities, but hopefully we can do this justice so you're not at least flying blind when you go.
Okay, so we have some terms to go through first before we get into the nitty gritty. A standby queue, that is your standard, everybody waits in line queue. These are the ones that you see when you see wait times on the My Disney Experience app. That is for the standby queues. And depending on the ride, they can get ridiculously long, which is another reason why sometimes it's worth, yes, you have to pay for it, but is it worth your time to be able to experience potentially 2 to 3 more rides during the time that you've been sitting there standing in line?
Time is money at Disney World.
Yeah.
Next is a virtual queue. This is a virtual line. It is free. It is open to everyone, but it's all about fast fingers. It's about how good your self-service is. This is available to everyone at 7 a.m. They also have an option at 1 p.m. if you have scanned into the park. And then there's another one at 6 p.m. if you have extended evening hours. These are currently at Tiana's Bayou Adventure in Magic Kingdom and Guardians of the Galaxy and Epcot. You get a boarding group and they will call groups throughout the day, usually in bunches like 1 to 10. So maybe at 10 a.m., you may see in the app that they are now loading groups 16 through 30. Once your group is called, you have 1 hour to redeem your spot in line. And they've just been doing these with all the new rides and attractions as their way of crowd control. Just because it's virtual does not mean that these lines are short. These will still get pretty long. We see that a lot with Guardians.
As an example, Tron, even though now it's no longer on virtual queue, they actually are using a standby line. When it was still on virtual queue, we used it last Christmas, or actually Christmas 2023. And so that put that out there as a caveat because it was very busy. But we used a virtual queue instead of purchasing an individual lightning lane at the time. And we still waited like 2.5 hours. That was awful. So for me, if I have the choice of doing now a single pass lightning lane for something like that versus the virtual queue, I'm doing that. I'm doing the single pass lightning lane. I'm not waiting for 2.5 hours for something, especially whenever it's like 30 seconds long. The next term is lightning lane, which it does kind of get muddy here because we have a couple of different types of or categories of lightning lanes that we need to talk through. When you're at the ride or at the attraction, there is a standby line and a lightning lane line. And so if you have a reservation, regardless of whatever your category is that we talk through, if you have a lightning lane reservation, you're going to use the lightning lane queue to go through to get to the attraction.
Next up, we have the Lightning Lane Single Pass. This is a one-time single purchase for the most popular rides in each park. Currently at Magic Kingdom, you have Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Epcot, you have Guardians of the Galaxy, Hollywood Studios, Rise of the Resistance, and Animal Kingdom, Flight of Passage. So these are, like I said, a purchase, and we will talk more about that later. But Single Pass is a purchase.
The next type of lightning lane is a multi-pass. And these are completely separate purchase from the single pass that Krystle just mentioned. This is more in line with the old Fast Pass or Genie Plus that you're thinking about. This is the purchase that includes a majority of the attractions at the parks. You can hold up to 3 reservations at any given time for multi-pass. And the biggest change is from Genie Plus is that now you can make pre-selections a week in advance if you are staying on property. It's 3 days prior to your first ticket day if you are off property, and use those. So you already have those booked before you get there, and you kind of know at least a little bit of what your schedule looks like for that before you get there. And then this, like I was saying, this doesn't include any of the rides that Krystle just reviewed that are in the single pass lightning lane category. This is a separate category. And just also to be clear, you do the pre-selects, but once you're in the parks, once you use a reservation, you can book another ride. So you can keep checking, you can keep making reservations throughout the day.
All right. Next, we have Lightning Lane Premier Pass. This is the newest skip the line system that they've introduced. This can range in price from about $160 to $400-ish, depending on the park. You're paying to not have to make any return times throughout the day in the app. You just walk up and skip the line at each ride one time. If you're familiar with Universal's Express Pass, it's essentially that. This is available to any resort guest on property, and it's just a hefty price tag.
The next one is Rider Switch. This gives the ability to families that if both adults want to ride, but they have a little that's not tall enough and isn't able to ride, and not have to wait in line twice. So I'm going to let Krystle talk a little bit more about it because she uses it a lot more than I do.
Yes, we take full advantage of Rider Switch. So basically, when you use it, whether you're going to wait in a traditional standby queue or whether you have a lightning lane booked, before you go get in line, you're going to find a cast member under an umbrella before you get to the basically divide of this is standby, this is lightning lane. And they're under an umbrella with an iPad, and it varies. Your mileage will vary on how strict they are. And if they have to see you, like John can't just say, my wife is at the resort with the baby. She would like a rider switch. We all kind of meet with them. They'll point me out and say, hey, she's going to wait with the baby. I will then give them my form of park admission, whether it's a magic band, your card, your magic mobile. And then they will ask me, is there someone you'd like to bring back with you? And so we kind of rotate between the kids. And then they will do something special to, say, Harper's ticket, depending on if it's a standby queue or if they're going on a lightning lane. So just kind of keep an eye out before you get into line.
But
That's
they
the
have a
biggest thing.
space too where you go off to the side and wait, correct?
Not necessarily. Usually, so like Slinky is such a bottleneck that they're kind of on the bridge, and I'm free to roam. Like I'll go get lunch at Woody's or go stand in line for a character. Like I don't have to be anywhere specific. They
Okay,
basically
that's awesome.
give my ticket like a timer of she has between this time and this time to come back and go through the lightning lane. So that is the plus thing is I go through the lightning lane even if John stood in standby. So he
Right.
could wait for 2 hours in standby and I could just, as soon as they get off, grab the kid, go scan in and go quick. So everyone who wants to, like if they're using a lightning lane, I also have to have a purchase lightning lane booked for that attraction. I can't like cheat the system and only book
Right.
for one parent and then use
Right.
the switch.
They're
So
basically trying just to make sure that you would have been waiting for 2 hours with John,
Mhm.
otherwise, or 20 minutes or whatever the time that you would have been waiting with John. They're trying to balance that out so that you don't have to wait 2 hours
Another
and
2
John has
hours.
to wait 2 hours.
Yes. So it gets a little confusing, but once you do it once, it's very like you're like, oh, this is a lot easier than it sounds.
Thankfully, I haven't had to use it a lot.
Well, and you don't even have to have like a little kid. Like I know that we have agency friends who have older kids that they just are afraid to
They just don't
ride.
want to ride. Yeah.
So they'll use it for that. So it's helpful for anybody.
So let's talk a little bit about pricing.
Hold on to your hat, folks.
For the Lightning Lane Multipass, these are tiered and per person per day. So the pricing varies based on how busy it is, really. It's based on demand. If you are going during Christmas or Thanksgiving, then you should expect to pay on the higher side. It's just the reality of consumer demand. So for Magic Kingdom, it typically ranges from $20 and then it goes up to, it's gone up to $39 around Christmas time. I just talked about being there at Christmas in 2023. We actually didn't use Lightning Lane during that time because, first of all, it was $40 and it was sold out. I mean, it was selling out every day. So when it's selling out, it's sometimes hard to justify the cost because you are going to wait longer than you typically would because all the people that are using lightning lanes, if that makes any sense. But typically we do use it when it's not in a super busy time, when it's like $20. Hollywood Studios ranges from $20 to $35. Epcot from $15 to $32. Animal Kingdom, $15 to $29. And most of the highest prices are going to be, like we just mentioned, around the holidays. Times that you would expect it. Kind of spring break time is probably going to also, the prices are going to be a little bit higher. But if you're there in September or in May, you're probably going to be paying on the lower side because those are just not as busy times.
Prices for the Lightning Lane single pass, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train range from 10 to 14. Tron ranges from 20 to 22, Guardians 14 to 19, Flight of Passage 13 to 18, and Res the Resistance 20 to 25.
So if you're thinking through this, those prices are for an individual ride. And the prices that I just went over are for, depending on the park, 10 to 20 or however many rides. It's for lots of different rides, lots of different options. Those prices are going to be covering a range. You are paying a premium for these individual rides because they are the most popular rides in the parks. Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, even when it's not busy, has a 2-hour wait.
Every day. All day, every day.
Every single day. And it is that way from like park open to close. Seriously, you basically have to rope drop that ride if you don't want to wait 2 hours. And you still might wait, depending on how fast you are to get over there. You still may wait 45 minutes to an hour, even rope dropping it. It's insanity. So we always buy. We always buy that because I'm not waiting in that line. I'm just not doing it. And then we talked about the premium pass that allows you to go on all of the lightning lanes. So this includes multi-pass and single pass lists of lightning lanes. You can go on each ride once per park. The pricing is for Magic Kingdom, it's $329 to $449 per person per day. Hollywood Studios is $269 to $349 per person per day. Epcot is $169 to $249, and then Animal Kingdom is $119 to $199. Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios are more expensive just because they have more attractions. Well, Magic Kingdom has the most attractions, period, and then Hollywood Studios just has a lot of very popular attractions.
So just a quick note, if you're thinking through all this, like, that's a lot of money. Yes. You don't have to buy multi-pass and single pass and premier pass. You can do a mix and match. You can just do, like Julie mentioned, they just did the single pass for Tron last year instead of the whole multi-pass because she didn't find it worth it. Premier pass is only available in one park. You can't park hop with it. So I know people who've bought it for Magic Kingdom and still had a lightning lane multi-pass for Epcot. So it just kind of depends on how you're going to tour for the day, but you can mix and match to your heart's desires, to your budget. It's not an all or nothing kind of thing.
So when we're talking about pre-selects, and this is kind of also ties into the purchase, when you do your pre-selects, we're going to go through how this works. When you do your pre-selects, you're able to see what options are available before you purchase. And this is something else that people really did not like about Genie Plus is you had to buy Genie Plus first. And
on prayer that it was available.
And then, and hopefully the rides that you wanted were available and didn't get gobbled up immediately. So it would be extremely frustrating. I'm going to call out Hollywood Studios because it's the worst one. Buying, Genie Plus for Hollywood Studios, and then you would go on there and like within like 0.1 seconds, like it was a millisecond, and Slinky Dog would be like at 7:00 like
PM sold out for the day.
Yeah, at 7:00 PM for the entire. It was just insane. So this gives you the opportunity to get your selections in, and if you're happy with them, then you can purchase. You can also purchase all of your lightning lane options together. So all of the different categories, you can purchase them together in one transaction versus having to purchase your multi-pass and your single passes in a separate transaction. That was also something that people got frustrated with Genie Plus.
I will say that now it is very sticker shock. Like when you're going to do your pre-selects for the week that you're there and you're running through everything for Monday, everything for Tuesday, maybe warn your bank account. Maybe warn your bank because it's not fraud of like 4 separate purchases all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true because When you did Genie Plus, you were doing it, one day at a time. And but when you do them all together at once for the entire week, yes, it definitely is like, wow, yikes. I didn't realize I was spending that much. Or maybe you did know and it just was, you just like put it in the back of your mind, but it's kind of hard not to see it when you're doing everything at once. So pre-selects for multi-pass, you can pre-select up to 3 rides for each of your park days. One of the biggest perks of staying on property is that you can do your selections 7 days in advance. So you get a jump of 4 days on people that are staying off property that theirs is 3 days prior. And your 7-day starts with the first day of check-in. So it's not your first day in the parks. So you still get that extra cushion. The 3 days for people staying off property that's based on their first ticketed day. It's very nice. And you also get the entirety of your stay. So just like with dining, once it opens up, it's open up for your entire stay and you can do everything for your entire trip. These open up at 7 a.m. Eastern. So they do divide your rides into 2 tiers. And this is something they did with FastPass. You can pick 1 ride from tier 1 and 2 rides from tier 2. Or if you pick, you can pick all 3 from tier 2 if you would like, but you can only pick 1 from tier 1. Once you've done that though, once you're in the parks, the tiers don't matter anymore. It's only the pre-select process that matters.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that get really hung up on that. And then I don't know if it just doesn't make sense but it kind of ruins their whole day because they're like, well, if I can only do 1 from this, like those are the most popular rides. You can get another essentially tier 1 later on your park day, but just don't get hung up on putting them in tiers after your selections.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It no longer matters once you're in the park. And once you scan your first lightning lane, it doesn't matter. The other thing is that your selections have to be from the same park. Even if you have a park hopper and you plan to park hop, when you're doing your pre-selections, you can only select from that, whatever that first park is that you're going to be in. Once you're in the parks, again, it doesn't, all of that goes out the window. You can reserve in a different park as long as you have park hopper tickets. You can reserve another, once you've used your first lightning lane, if you want to use the next one in a different park, that's completely fine. You can do that. Another thing to keep in mind is that this is the pre-selections. You do have to be within the United States or Canada to do your pre-selections. So at the 7-day window, if you aren't in the United States or in Canada, you're not going to be able to get in to do your pre-selections at that point. We have heard that there are some workarounds from individuals that are in Europe and they have turned off the location services on their phone whenever they've done the pre-selections and they've been able to do it. We also have, obviously, some people have family, that are in the States and they use their family. They ask their family to help out. And, sometimes also depending on the travel agent will help out because obviously we're in the States. So there's definitely workarounds.
Some people also mention a VPN. I'm not familiar. So if you know what that means, Google it.
Yeah, I think that people have tried to do that, but that has not necessarily been successful. I think it's more dependent on your location. And even if you're using a VPN, it can still pick up that location and it doesn't necessarily work. But yes, I think I've heard that people have tried that as well. But I really think it's mostly going to be about that location, that the app is picking up. It's looking for whether you're within the United States or not.
All right, so let's talk about tiers for your multi-pass in Magic Kingdom. Your tier 1 that you will choose 1 from this group is Jungle Cruise, Peter Pan's Flight, Space Mountain, and Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Tier 2, where you can choose 2 or all 3, you have the Barnstormer, Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin, Dumbo the Flying Elephant, Haunted Mansion, It's a Small World, Mad Tea Party, The Magic Carpets of Aladdin, The Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Mickey's Philhar Magic, Monsters Inc. Laugh War, Pirates of the Caribbean, Tomorrowland Speedway, and Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid.
For Epcot, your tier 1 are going to be Frozen Ever After, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, and Soarin' Around the World. Your tier 2 are Disney and Pixar Short Film Festival, Journey into Imagination with Figment, Living with the Land, Mission Space, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Spaceship Earth, and Turtle Talk with Crush.
I do suspect Test Track will be a tier 1 when it comes back.
I would agree with you there. This one is really tough because everything that you want to ride, I mean, honestly, the things that have a wait for the most part are all in tier 1. And, I have conversations with my clients that really, unless you just are really want to ride one of those, at this point, those 3 rides, and that will ruin your trip if you do not get to ride them, I currently wouldn't purchase MultiPass for Epcot because for my family, we don't really, sorry, don't send me hate mail, but we don't really like Remy's, and we're not huge fans of Frozen Ever After. I mean, I'm fine with it. That would probably be what we would rope drop if we were going to rope drop something. And then we would run over to Soarin' right after Frozen Ever After. Everything else doesn't typically have a huge line unless it is obviously like super crazy busy. And that might be an opportunity where you would use it. But during a typical visit, we don't buy it for Epcot.
For Hollywood Studios, your tier 1s are Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith, and Slinky Dog Dash. Your tier 2s are Alien Swirling Saucers, Beauty and the Beast live on stage, Disney Junior Play and Dance, For the First Time in Forever, a Frozen sing-along celebration, Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, Muppet Vision 3D, Star Tours The Adventure Continue, The Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, and Toy Story Mania.
So I do want to make just a quick note on Hollywood Studios compared to Epcot. There's not a huge difference. Actually, Hollywood Studios has more attractions than Epcot, but you hear us all the time complaining
All shows
that Hollywood Studios is really horrible with not having enough to do. And it's usually the Lightning Lane situation can be, well, with Genie Plus, it was awful.
Cutthroat. It's cutthroat.
Yeah. But the difference is that Hollywood Studios, this is what they have, and they don't have another area to gobble up people. And Epcot has World Showcase that tons of people are in World Showcase. They're at the booths, they're at the festivals, they're doing other things, and and that takes them away from the rides. And so the ride wait times are just not as bad. So Hollywood Studios just needs more something to gobble up some people or put people somewhere so that they're not all trying to ride those top like 4 or 5 rides when they're there. Okay. So Animal Kingdom, bless its heart, it does not have any tiers. It's all like just one list. So you pick 3 from this list: Dinosaur, Expedition Everest, Feathered Friends in Flight, Festival of the Lion King, Finding Nemo, The Big Blue and Beyond. It's Tough to Be a Bug, which is closing soon and will be replaced by Zootopia
Better
attraction.
Zoogether.
Yeah.
Or something.
It's really hard to say, I think. Cali River Rapids, Kilimanjaro Safaris, and then Navi River Journey.
We've talked about single pass. There are no tiers for single pass, but each park has 1 or 2. So Magic Kingdom has Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Epcot has Guardians of the Galaxy. Hollywood Studios, Rise of the Resistance. Animal Kingdom has Flight of Passage. All right. Should we talk strategies? This is where it gets kind of hairy. All right. So if you are a first timer or if you've not been there for a long time, I would pick one or two priorities for your entire trip. If this is something like Tiana's that is a hard to get lightning lane, I'd put Magic Kingdom towards the end of your trip for the best chances and availability. Times do open up when others change their plans, but nothing is guaranteed, and you'll be in your app refreshing for a week straight trying to snag something. But like dining, when your reservation day arrives, you get the length of your trip opened as well. So this is where staying on property for your 7-day prior picks and longer trips get the best picks. So basically choose one that's your top priority and put that park last and that ride be the first pick. And then I would work backwards.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like we use similar strategy with dining. If it's a super duper difficult reservation or something like Bibbidi Boppity Boutique, because everyone that started their trip before yours and they're ending their trip at the beginning of your trip, they've already gobbled up all those reservations. So you have a higher chance using the end of your trip for those types of things. For the next 21 days, the hardest to get attractions for pre-selections for each park in order. For Magic Kingdom, it's Tiana's, Haunted Mansion, Peter Pan, Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Pirates of the Caribbean, Tron. There's still no standby queue for Tiana's, so it is virtual queue or lightning lane. And that's a lot of the reason, I think, why it's also, new and it's still considered new. So it's going to be hard to get.
I do want to mention that this list is ever changing and evolving.
Yeah.
But like I was surprised not to see Jungle Cruise on there. So like if Jungle Cruise is one of your top priorities, that's usually on this list.
Yeah. That's interesting because I think it's probably because Jungle Cruise is in that top tier and people are choosing Tiana's over Jungle Cruise.
Yes.
At this point. For Epcot, it is Frozen, Remy, Soarin', and Turtle Talk, which that makes me laugh.
There's not very many tier twos.
But Turtle Talk, like it's still, I can't imagine it's like super difficult to grab.
Well, then let's move on to Hollywood Studios. Currently, for Hollywood Studios, the hardest to get is Slinky, which it's one of the toughest besides Tiana's to get. Mm-hmm. Toy Story Mania, Tower of Terror, Beauty and the Beast live on stage.
What?
Above Rise of the Resistance.
That's so funny. That's so weird.
Not even Frozen Ever After, like Frozen, the sing along. Beauty and the Beast live on stage. And above Rock and Roller Coaster.
That's funny. That is really funny. Okay. Animal Kingdom is Navi River Journey, Flight of Passage, Festival of the Lion King, and Expedition Everest.
And Everest is so low on that list because it has a single rider line that a lot of people will take advantage of.
Yeah.
So without knowing what you want to prioritize and based on easiest to hardest, I'd lay out park days. Monday, Animal Kingdom would be a good one to start with because I personally don't use multipass in Animal Kingdom. Some people do. Some people like it. And then the next day I would do Magic Kingdom unless you really, really, really want Tiana's, just because there are so many options there. Then I would put Epcot, and then I would end your trip with Hollywood Studios for Slinky Dog. But this is going to change for anybody and everybody and whatever your priorities are. We personally like it at Epcot, but it also has a lot of any height rides, which is huge for my little family.
Yeah.
And we'll rope drop one, hit another one. But then this is where I get so frustrated because it's next to impossible to get 2 top tier rides. So like for a first timer or a once in a lifetime trip, it sucks to have to choose like between which one, and your options are to either rope drop or choose to wait in a 2-hour line during your busy days. With the old system, we were there spring break at Epcot. I snagged each of those 3 hard to get ones. And I had Test Track on there. I would snag a Remy and a Frozen and a Test Track. And that's next to impossible to do now.
Especially at Epcot, those Frozen and Remy, rope dropping, either one of those, you have to hustle.
And you
It
have to
is-
plan on being to the gate
It is
before,
crazy.
like an hour before park opens.
It is insanity. When we were there in October, I mean, we got there for early park hours, and the line was already, if you're familiar with the International Gateway entrance where the Skyliner comes in, it was already across the bridge, like down into like wrapping around, and the park hadn't even opened yet. So it was nuts. And of course, we just glided on by and went to Starbucks because we don't care about that. But
I will say that the positive for this is it's so much easier to plan your day. Like you can line up your return times with your dining,
yes,
and it's so much easier to have a plan going in. This isn't even in our notes and we're not going to talk about it, but if you're worried about the price, go through and look and see what has single rider lines, especially if you have older kids or adults. It's hard for me, my little family, to do single rider right now just because I have little tiny kids. I think you even have to be 7 or 8, maybe older
I'm
to,
surprised if they would let a 7 or 8-year-old go in there by themselves.
yeah, it's somewhere right around there. So they're testing one at Remy right now. So that could help things.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And they're testing one at Rise, but you're not guaranteed to sit by each other. But if it's a ride or die, maybe a single rider line may save your frustration.
So once you have a good handle on doing the pre-selects and you feel confident with that, another good strategy is to schedule a burner lightning lane, which is basically schedule something. Well, even if it's not necessarily at the top of your list, schedule something that is first thing so that as soon as you get to the parks, you scan in and then you can like rope drop, and or this could be your second ride after your rope dropping, and then scan in, and then you're automatically able to grab something else basically as soon as you get to the parks, and you're not waiting until 10 o'clock until your first lightning lane, and other people are grabbing up some of those other rides. So for example, in Epcot, rope drop Remy, and then have Living with the Land or Figment as your burner, whatever has the earliest time. They're going to be super easy to grab because they're not top of the list, and then run over like right after Remy's, use it, and then you can reserve something else.
And then you could even you might look out with Frozen or Soarin', one of the two. And at this time too, you could modify, getting more complicated here. You could modify what you have picked for the day to one of those tier ones that's hard to get, or another park.
Honestly, I know this sounds like, if you've never done this before, it sounds a little bit complicated, but once you do it, it's really one of those things that once you've used it and you get the hang of it, it kind of clicks. I mean, I remember like the first time I used Genie Plus, I was like freaking out because I'd never used it before and I knew how to use it. I mean, I knew all the directions, I knew like all of the strategies and how you're supposed to do this or that, but I was still freaking out. Same thing, like even though I knew how to use Genie Plus and knew all the rules and everything, as soon as they released this new branded multipass, I was also like freaking out when I had to do the pre-selects. So, but once you do it, it's not so bad. The other thing too is if you have a lot of dining reservations, you need to, like, if you have multiple dining reservations and you're trying to decide between which ones, you really need to kind of narrow that down and know what you're doing before you hit that 7-day prior, because the app will actually, it'll warn you and it'll say you have something else at this time. And it also, if you're not absolutely sure where you're going, then it's going to mess with your reservations of your lightning lane reservations. You need to know, okay, we're dining at this time on this day in this park. And that will allow you to make absolutely sure that when you're making those lightning lane reservations that they're going to work and they're not going to mess things up.
All right. We've talked about your pre-selections before your trip. So now let's talk about a couple things day of. So we mentioned this earlier, but just keep it in the front of your mind. You can always have 3 things booked. So to get the best use out of your lightning lane multi-pass, always hold 3 reservations. As soon as you scan into a ride, most rides have 2 scans. Just be aware of that. Book something else ASAP. And always just kind of like the ever revolving wheel. Like I mentioned, after your first scan of the day, you can book in other parks if you're hopping. You can even modify your second, third pre-selects to different lightning lanes in that park into other parks. And like we said, tiers go away day of. So if you know you're hopping, you could potentially make all your pre-selects for your second park later in the day. You just can't stack like the old system could, and you won't be able to use any of your lightning lanes in your first park. So example, if I'm starting at Hollywood Studios to rope drop, Tower of Terror, and Rock and Roller Coaster, then heading to Epcot, I'd try for Remy or Frozen, Soarin', and something else midday in Epcot, just because I know that those are more popular and it would be easy to rope drop in Hollywood Studios and then take the Skyliner over.
In our trip in October, I was very grumpy about the situation in Hollywood Studios. And so after we finished lunch, I basically changed all of our lightning lanes over to Epcot because everything was super duper late at Hollywood Studios or just not available anymore. If you have a park hopper ticket, you can definitely pivot and go to a different park. And that's really nice that you can do that because you can make that decision pretty quickly.
All right. So some other things just to note about using your lightning lanes. Scanning in for your lightning lane. Each person with a ticket will need to scan into their own lightning lane in order to enter the lightning lane queue. If you have little kids, make sure that they put their arm up there and they scan their magic band, because you will run into issues and not be able to make another selection.
Yeah.
And it's a mess. So you can either scan your magic band, your physical ticket, your magic mobile if you have an Apple Watch, or your phone. And they have like these little Mickey icon scanner things.
And it dings. It's the best sound.
Ding!
I honestly carry the magic bands for Lena's fine, but Ella, yeah, she tends to lose things. And so I carry her magic band.
That's smart of you.
And I give it to her. If she wants to scan in, it's fine. And obviously when we go into the parks, she has to scan it. She has to be the one to do it. But I hand it to her when we need it, but I carry it and she does not keep it. So if you have a little one or not so little one, Ella's 11, that tends to lose things and that's going to be a problem, I would suggest carrying it for them and then handing it to them when it's time.
Yeah, Harper's has about 4 of the little teeny tiny clear plastic rubber hair bands around it, like clear up the band just to like secure it.
As we've mentioned, once everybody scans in, as soon as you scan through, and Krystle mentioned earlier, sometimes there's 2 scans basically to make sure that people don't cheat and jump in the line somehow and then try to get through. They'll have a second section, a second area where you have to scan in. Once you scan in that final spot, then that releases the reservation so that you can add a new one. So as soon as you do that, you can start looking for the next reservation. It's really helpful if however many adults you have, if it's husband and wife or, spouses, have both of you have your apps ready and looking so that you can kind of tag team that situation and make sure you get something.
So the window for using your lightning lane, officially, the window is 1 hour long. So, however, you can enter the line up to 5 minutes early and up to 15 minutes late. I have heard it's kind of extended a little bit, but don't take my word for that. So, example, if your return time is between 2 and 3 p.m., you could unofficially use it from 1:55 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. So you kind of have 80 minutes. But
Don't bank
If
on
you
that, man.
no, and if you have little kids, okay, well, first, if a ride has gone down and it's anytime between your callback, if Pirates of the Caribbean goes down between 2 and 3 p.m., and that is your callback time, they will give you an automatic any experience ride for Magic Kingdom that you can use on basically any ride except for like Tron and Tiana's. There's fine print.
Yeah, you have to look at that.
But if you have little kids and you are at 1:54 p.m. and scanning into your callback from 2 to 3 p.m., it will take that multi-experience, which is like a golden ticket, and take it from your account.
Oh, yeah, that's and you do not want that to happen.
We had that happen like 6 times at Disneyland, and it is so frustrating. So as a parent, just make sure you're kind of keeping an eye on what you have and
Your return
what
times are.
yes, because those multi-experience passes are, like I said, a golden ticket that you can. We like to do it for like our favorite ride and go back a second time because you can't do that. So that was not planned in our notes, but be aware of that.
Okay. So if you have the Premier Pass, it gives you a one-time entry to each of the lightning lanes, and that's the lightning lanes for multi-pass and single pass. You go to the lightning lane entrance, you tap in using your Magic Band or Magic Mobile, Key to the World card, whatever it is, and you skip the standby line and join the lightning lane line. And you can do that over and over. At least it's just once per ride though. So, but you can do that for any of the rides. You can just show up. You don't have to worry about a return time or specific scheduling of anything like that.
All right, some more tips. Don't forget that 7 a.m. virtual queue. I always turn off my resort Wi-Fi and use cellular. You could potentially have multiple people in your party trying for the same virtual queue. We did that on our agency trip. We were all linked and we were all trying for the same thing from different resorts.
If you want to do the 1 p.m. virtual queue, you do have to be in the park where that ride or where that attraction is in order to do that. So you can't try to get a virtual queue for Guardians if you are at Hollywood Studios. It's not going to work. It's not going to allow you to do it. If you are staying at a deluxe resort and happen to have the extra evening, or extended evening hours, or some type of after hours event, there's also another virtual queue that's at 6 p.m. For the 6 p.m. virtual queue time slot, you do not have to be in the park in order to reserve or try to grab a boarding group for the virtual queue if you have access to some type of extended evening hours.
A question I get asked a lot is does everyone need their own account? Not necessarily. I know lots of people who will work in the same account and it works just fine. Mom will have an account. She'll sign in to My Disney Experience on her husband's phone, maybe a teenage son's phone, and then they can all work together using the same features. If you do have multiple accounts, this is what John and I do. We are just linked as friends and family. So you can add anybody from your friends and family list as long as they have valid park admission to your selections. So like I mentioned, this is what we did in June for our agency trip. It was the second day of Tiana's and we were all trying for all the things.
Trying to get in. Yeah. Rob and I do this same thing. We each have our own account and we're linked under family and friends. And I don't know how. I don't know what it is about his phone. I don't know. I really don't. But he has, or if he's just like really, really good at it. But I always leave the virtual queue up to him because he always seems to be able to get in. Like back whenever it was almost like next to impossible to get a virtual queue for Rise of the Resistance, he would get it. I'm like, and my phone's still sitting there like, what?
Still
what
thinking, still spinning.
what are we doing? What do I need to do? And he's already booked it.
That's
Dang
funny.
it. So characters are not currently included. They were in Genie Plus. So I feel like they've probably gotten a lot of feedback that people want characters added back in.
I wish they
So,
would. It would suck so much people, like so many people's different directions.
yeah, I mean, I think it's not going to hurt anything. It's
No,
not like it's going to,
spread the love.
yeah, it's not, I don't think that would negatively impact anything
They
if
have
they,
feathered friends in flight on there. How can they not put a Mickey meet and greet?
yeah, seriously. So, yeah, at this point they don't, but we're all kind of hoping that they add them back in at some point.
Do we need it? No, absolutely not. I know lots of people who never use the Lightning Lane multipass, but I firmly believe if it's a once in a lifetime trip, I'd suggest it. Do it right. Get the most for the bang for your buck. Get the most out of your trip. In saying that, we do think some parks are more crucial than others. In order of importance, I would say Hollywood Studios, Magic Kingdom, Epcot, then Animal Kingdom. Like I said, I never suggested for Animal Kingdom, but that may change once the Tropical Americas open down the road.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be crazy. And I'm guessing we might have some virtual queues added for some of the
Oh,
newer
I'm
rides.
sure. So we do it for Hollywood Studios, Magic Kingdom, Epcot. What does your family do?
We typically just do Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom. We'll do the single pass for Guardians. And that's just for Ella and myself because my husband and Lena tried it for the second time. And after they did that, they were like, okay, yeah, we're done. We're not doing this ever again. So that one is only just the two of us that do that one. But really that's the only thing we really use it for. And Epcot, we love Soarin', but we usually just rope drop Soarin' because we don't really care about the other bigger rides.
So in saying that, for Animal Kingdom, we do buy the single pass for Flight of Passage.
Yeah, actually, I will do that for Rob and Ella. As much as I do love that ride, it kind of makes me sick. So, and Lena just doesn't really like it. So I just let them do it because they both love it. Okay, so we have some frequently asked questions that we're going to go through. First one, what is the difference between Lightning Lane Multipass and Genie Plus? Lightning Lane Multipass is the new branding for the old program Disney Genie Plus. However, it also has some changes as we've talked through. It has introduced the ability to book Lightning Lane reservations ahead of time. So Disney Resort guests can book up to 7 days in advance. All other guests can book up to 3 days in advance of their park ticket day. Disney Resort guests, theirs is based on their check-in date. Guests may choose 3 Lightning Lane experiences ahead of time for one park. On the day of their visit, you can select another Lightning Lane once you've redeemed the first selection. So as we talked about the tiers and also the park restrictions of having just one park, all of that goes out the window. Once you use your first Lightning Lane the day of, you can book any Lightning Lane regardless of tier and regardless of park. The selections are made prior to purchasing, so you can see what's available and you're able to actually pick your times before you have to pay. The pricing is not ever going to be the same, really. It's dynamic pricing based on demand. So it's going to vary regardless. It's going to vary based on demand and popularity at that time.
What is the difference between a Lightning Lane single pass and individual Lightning Lane? The single pass is the new name for the individual Lightning Lane. It also introduces the ability to book Lightning Lane reservations ahead of time. So similar, you can just have it planned before you go.
How many Lightning Lane single pass purchases can you make in a day? You are allowed up to 2 Lightning Lane single passes per day. So you do have the ability, if you're in Magic Kingdom, you can purchase both Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, or if you're park hopping, you can purchase one option from each park.
What are the busiest times at Walt Disney World? Spring break, typically the week of Easter, the week of Thanksgiving, and the week after Christmas through New Year's Day.
What is the difference between a virtual queue and a boarding group at Disney World? The virtual queue and the boarding group go hand in hand. So when you join a virtual queue, you are going to be given a boarding group number. They start at 1 and can go up through 200 at different points throughout the day. The ranges or sets of boarding groups will be called. If you're using the app will notify you if your group has been called, and you obviously can also watch it as they are being called. If your group is within whatever that range is, you can then go join the queue for the attraction. As we've mentioned, joining a virtual queue does not mean that it's going to be fast. It's not the same as a lightning lane. You're still joining a standby line with everyone else for that particular ride. It's just a way for them to control the crowds for something that's newer so that the standby queue doesn't get out of control.
What attractions offer a virtual queue? Currently, it is only Tiana's Bayou Adventure at Magic Kingdom and Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot.
Can you do the virtual queue twice for the same ride on the same day? So yes and no. If you do not have access to an extended evening hours event, you can only do the virtual queue once. But if you are in that park throughout the day and then you also do the extended evening hours, then you can try at 7 or 1 to get the earlier, one of those two options. If you have access to the extended evening hours or a special ticketed event like Very Merry Christmas Party, you can obtain the boarding group at 6 p.m. So it just depends. It depends on what you're doing. If you just have a regular ticket to the parks, no, you have access to get it once.
And I feel like it depends on the ride. I know that we saw Tiana's was just offering a regular standby ride line during some of the parties. Probably some of the earlier, not so busy parties.
Mm-hmm.
They were testing it.
Yeah.
So don't always bank on that.
Yeah.
What happens if an attraction sells out? This can and does happen, especially during heavy crowd season. When this happens, just keep refreshing the tip board. Some lightning lanes may become available. I like to give my clients like a list of when things, in quotes, sell out, just so you kind of have an idea of what to prioritize.
Okay. We're going to do some sample pricing for each of our families. We're picking January 20th, which is Martin Luther King holiday. So it's going to be a higher crowd day for January. So I'm going to pick Magic Kingdom. If we do Magic Kingdom and we purchase the multi-pass lightning lane, it's going to be $29 per person. So as we mentioned, it's based on demand. So the pricing is going to be on the higher side. For Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, it's going to be $13 per person. And then for Tron, it's going to be $21 per person. If we were going to do the Premier Pass, it would be $359 per person.
I'll just do the Premier Pass.
Mm-hmm. So if I can't do math. So if we do just the multi-pass, and then we would all do Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and then it would only be Ella and myself for Tron. So for the day at Magic Kingdom, with all of those options as giving us availability to do selections, it would be $210 for the one day.
Yeah.
If we were to do the, which we would not, because I literally, unless we win the lottery, I don't ever see us using this Premier Pass. The Premier Pass would be $1,436 for all of us for the day.
That could be more than your resort stay.
Well, it would be because we use DVC points. So
I know, but me as a paying cash person,
it would be more than our resort stay. That's crazy.
All right. We're going to do, for my family, Hollywood Studios for that same day. Pricing for the day is looking like multi-pass is at $24. Rise of the Resistance is at $22, and Lightning Lane Premier Pass is at $309. So we will buy the Lightning Lane Multipass for $5 because Reese is now ticketed. Ugh, Reese is ticketed. So for $5 to buy, to buy Lightning Lane Multipass, we would buy 5 for $120. For Rise of the Resistance, this is not one I love. So the last time I didn't buy it for myself, but if it was a one and done trip, I would do it. So if we bought 4, Reese is not tall enough, it'd be another $88 just for one ride. But in saying that, one of my children would get to ride it twice because of rider swap. So $88 plus $120, we're looking at $208 for my family of 5 to do Hollywood Studios for one day. The Premier Pass, we'd have to buy it for all 5 of us. $1,545.
Yeah. And guys, like the Premier Pass sold out at Christmas. Like that many people. I don't know how many they have available, but that's just crazy. I know that some people, have differing opinions on the Lightning Lane, the multi-pass and the single pass and having to pay for those. I don't really think that is too like crazy. I'm completely okay with it because I feel like it's worth it to be able to experience more, especially like Krystle said, if it's your trip that you're taking and it's like you're either one and done or it's like once, every 5 years or something like that, and you want to experience as much as possible. I do think it's worth it. And it's just something you have to kind of budget into your trip and think about as you're planning. And, that's definitely something that you want to think about in addition to, what you're doing for if you're going to do dining, or maybe you would rather do this than do a bunch of sit down dining. And
well, we see that a lot with my family. We would rather do lightning lanes than a sit down dining.
And I think that, to be honest, I think a lot of people have been doing that. We've noticed as travel advisors, not that there still aren't places that have difficult reservations, like they're very popular and it can be tough to get a reservation. But across the board, there's a lot more availability dining wise because I think people are choosing to use their money on lightning lanes and get quick service versus spending, $250 on a sit down meal. I mean, and that's pretty common for a family of 4. And I mean, Krystle is now going to be, adding in Reese to some of that pricing. Once you get into a family of 4 or 5, it's going to be $250 to $300 to sit down and eat at, especially if it's character breakfast or a character meal. So you may say, I don't want to spend that $250 on dining. I want to spend the $250 on lightning lane. And that's what you choose to do.
Yeah.
Strategy.
I just did the math for our Magic Kingdom that same day, and we would be at $294, which is typical. Like I tell people to budget about $300 per day if you want to do lightning lanes. Mm-hmm. And like you said, if I was doing a character meal, it could be $50, $60 per person, and it's going to be about a wash.
Yeah. I think it comes down to what's most important for your family. And there's tons of great quick service options that are, I feel like, very close to a table service experience. You don't have a waiter, but the food is fantastic. And, it's still a great experience. We actually had a request to do a episode on quick service dining. So
it's coming.
Yeah. Krystle's going to educate me on quick service. I need to be more educated on quick service. We have our favorites that we do a lot, and I need to be better about going to different quick service so that I have more experience with them. And obviously you guys have heard, I also have my favorites for table service, and we usually do that a lot. But we may be changing that because if you were looking at the budget, it might make more sense for us to do quick service. So,
What is more important to your family? I would just prioritize that basically.
exactly. Well, we hope that this has been helpful. We know that it's a lot, and it's definitely something that as travel advisors we help with for our clients. We have guides and review how this works and answer all the questions, because it can be a little complicated, especially if you're using it for the first time. We hope everybody has a great week, and we'll talk to you all next week. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Wanderlust and Wishes.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.
And remember, the world is full of wonders waiting to be explored. Until next time, happy travels.
Bye for now.